Okay, this should really connect the dots for you guys. Obviously, we're dealing with people that are deceived by the serpent doctrine, and what I'm going to show you here is what I would just simply call the serpent fractal. And you're going to see, if you watch the entirety of this video, every possible way imaginable to make the connection and to show you the truth of this matter, that this serpent, these serpents, are associated with deception, associated with destruction, and even associated with the fire, the ending of an age, and the birthing of a golden egg. The very same themes that you're going to find in the Hebrew Bible, the very same themes that are associated with the great work of fallen Israel, even associated with these cockatrice eggs of Isaiah, which are the eggs of serpents. So I'm going to read you something here entitled "The Churning of the Sea of Milk," which will explain this picture of the statue of Buddha that is seated atop this seven-headed Naga serpent, seated atop the coils of this cobra-like serpent, which is bearing 7 heads. Just one of them has been broken off here on the side. I promise you that you are going to come to an amazing understanding of the big picture if you just give me the time to go ahead and lay this out. It will, if you want to see, and as I read the words, you will see how this 7-headed serpent symbolism is going to pair up perfectly with what I've already revealed about the 7 stage of judgments that are recorded in the Hebrew Bible, associated with Leviticus, that are associated with Revelation, that are also associated with Genesis and Revelation, as they recount serpents appearing at the beginning and ending of these world ages. Just like you see in Revelation, that after their supposed kingdom, 1,000-year world reign, then what happens again? Then the serpent is released. Just like at the beginning of Genesis, after we see the supposed destruction from line 2 of Genesis, then we see once again the appearance of the serpent on the stage of the beginning and the ending of world age cycles. And I'm telling you, what you're going to find is that the serpent doctrine has spread the globe, and it is interlaced into every ancient mystery religion around the world. And the story is the same. The parameters of the symbols will tell you the exact same story that is being revealed in the Hebrew Bible if you can correctly divide the word. Now, before I go ahead and read, since we're talking about a cobra, and what I'm hoping to do is to show these people in a very plain manner that if they are following after these serpent doctrines of ye are gods, this serpent illumination, this serpent enlightenment, I'd like you to see quite plainly that the serpent plans on destroying you, does not plan on bringing you to this supposed perfection. And might I remind you that none of those before that have practiced this serpent doctrine have reached this supposed perfection, that they are lying in the dust, just as all flesh will lie in the dust until it is raised again unto a righteous judgment. Think about popular symbolisms of the serpent, and I'm going to show you here without a doubt that the serpent fractal will give these people a dire warning that they need to understand. Let's take the king cobra for the first example. And at the same time, I would like to pair the king cobra with the eastern king snake. Now, most of you are familiar with the king cobra as being a snake that inhabits Asia, that inhabits Africa. And then the serpent has a great hood. And of course, the key thing to understand is that this king cobra is a cannibal. It eats other serpents. Matter of fact, it is the chief food source of the king cobra is other snakes, even other cobras. The serpent, the king serpent, is a cannibal, and that he is going to eat, he is going to devour and destroy his very followers. Now, that's really not by any accident, because I will show you the exact same thing with the eastern king snake of the eastern United States. We're saying king cobra, and then we're going to say king snake. There is something that links these two titled snakes as kings perfectly together, and that is that the eastern king snake is also a cannibal, in which its chief food source is other snakes. This snake is going to turn on supposedly its own kind, and these people that are being duped into the serpent wisdom and doctrine, they really have no idea. They're unable to understand the words of Hosea, the words of Isaiah, the words of Ezekiel, even the parable of truth from Jesus Christ that continually warn them against these cockatrices, against these serpent eggs. So if we take the eastern king snake and fulfill the fractal further, now don't forget the Jacobson's organ that is associated with the sensory perception of the tongue, the forked tongue of the serpent. It's no accident, as I've said before, that this organ is named Jacobson's. And then we know that the sons of Jacob that are associated with the adopted sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, are completely lined with this ancient serpent king descendancy, in which when you give me a chance to read about this, you'll see that it's the very same thing as well. So back to the king snake, the eastern king snake of the United States. Guess what the colors are of the eastern king snake of the United States? Well, it is black and white. Once again, black and white. The very same assemblages that we see that are associated with these mystery religions, with this duality of the light and the darkness, the good and the evil, the birth and the death. The eastern king snake is not only black and white, not only does it live off of eating, cannibalizing its own kind, the black and white is separated by bands that resemble chains. Are not these bands the perfect association with the loosing of the bands of Orion that are further associated with these beings that are associated with the constellational stars, the constellational star symbols of the Pleiades and Orion? Now, this mystery goes further to the connection of Orion, how it shifts to the connection of the Pleiades associated with the 7 stars of the Pleiades, which will match up perfectly with the 7 heads of this Naga serpent that will connect further to the 7 chakras, and then even connect further to these 7 world ages of destruction. But my wish and my hope is that you will Google the eastern king snake of the United States. And then you might remember some scripture, the parable of truth that Jesus Christ quotes, that describes the association of this lightning that is coming out of the east, which is trying to mimic the coming of Jesus Christ that is also associated with this east. So the eastern king snake, symbolized in perfect accord with the very same images of the cannibalism of the king cobra, is symbolizing these bands, these chains that are further connected to the black and white symbolism of the orders of mystery religion commonly associated with the fraternal order of Freemasonry. Now, all of that should cause people that are looking into this serpent doctrine as something that they want to get involved with. If you can view this with the simplicity of the eyes of a child, before you hear what I'm about to read that will broaden the understanding of the things that I've just said, you should easily be able to realize that the world around you is teaching you that these supposed king serpents are destroyers of their own kind. The king cobra, destroyer of its own kind. The eastern king snake, destroyer of its own kind. If it is both black and white, if it is both associated with this good and this evil, you better just go forward into our understanding, let's talk about, once again, Jacobson's organ. How in the world is it possible that this organ that's associated with the forked tongue of a serpent is called the Jacobson's organ, in perfect accord to the sons of Jacob that associate themselves with these ancient serpent kings of Babylon, Egypt, and even Judea? Incredible. Now let's think about the association of the serpent symbolized as the viper, just like we see in I think it would be Genesis chapter 49 as it describes Dan. And we know that Dan is also that serpent judge. Dan is even symbolized as a serpent right out of Jacob's own mouth in Genesis chapter 49 as it describes Dan as a serpent, even an adder blocking the path. Now, what is an adder? An adder is a viper. More importantly, an adder is a pit viper. Now, where is this supposed fallen prince supposed to be coming from? He's supposed to be coming from the bottomless pit. Apollyon, the angel of the bottomless pit, as this angel is further associated with the serpent, we can see that the adders themselves that Jacob is describing Dan shall appear as in the last days are perfectly in accord with the pit. These serpents and these snakes of the abyss, the pit vipers. Now, let's take into context the very shape of the head of pit vipers. And the head of pit vipers is triangular. Triangular is their head. Perfectly fulfilling the fractal, the serpent fractal, for any that have the eyes to see that this serpent doctrine is a farce. Is it a deception to break the will of man and to bring about this will of this fallen one upon our world? Now, of course, if I was to produce the images of these serpents, the eastern king snake, and show you the black and white bands with the chaining features upon him, show you pictures of these serpents eating their own kind, it would be much more powerful. If anybody that does upload my videos that would like to add these images of the eastern king snake and the cobra and other images that accompany this, even the Jacobson's organ, as I speak about it, please do. It would add to the inspiration of truth that can be brought to the minds of these people that might be walking in this crooked path. Because basically this video is an attempt to get people to see the plain truth. So the serpent fractal is complete, all the way down to the forked tongue, sensory organ, the Jacobson's organ, connected to these believers of the serpent royalty associated with Ephraim and Manasseh that come directly from this royal lineage out of ancient Egypt. Okay? And then the king cobra, the very king of all of these serpents, is an eater, a destroyer of his own kind. Think about that, guys. All right, now, before you're going to understand this chart much better, but basically you could see it in two ways at this moment. You could see it marking 7 world ages from Eden till now. And this will tie up with Leviticus that talks about these 7-fold judgments. It will tie up with this vengeance of Cain, which is also 7-fold times 70 generations. And you're going to see it reflected right here with what we're talking about with this Hindu Naga mysticism. The very same doctrine about the serpent within the Hebrew Bible is the very same doctrine that we'll see that is based upon this mystery religion here. And it will be a perfect reflection of what I'm telling you, that this serpent has been bound for a period of time associated with 7-fold, which is now being mimicked within 7 world ages, which can be tracked from Eden till now, roughly about 40,000 years. The 40,000 year period covers 7 world ages of roughly 1,000 or 5,125 years apiece, which gives us a rough approximation of about 40,000 years, give or take. And I've already covered this in the video series entitled The Start Date for Eden is 36,288 BC. In other words, circa for the start date. It's not the exact start date, but at least it is the pinpoint time that you can pinpoint in Genesis where this vengeance of Cain is supposed to start from in association with this sevenfold sealing until we see it. And we know that the vengeance of Cain is going to be associated with this serpent destruction, the very same thing that we see associated in the path of the serpent along the spine, the 33-member spinal cord, as the serpent seeks to bust through the crown, the capital, the dome of the head of the person who is initiating this possession of the serpent. We know that this piercing of the serpent through the crown, through the dome of the head, is reflective of destruction, that even the person who is experiencing this experiences discomfort and even pain, and in sometimes paralysis. You would have to view the medical papers that do talk about this experience of the rising kundalini in a negative light. I've already shown it in that book describing stalking the wild pendulum. Nonetheless, you should see now that the chakras themselves are associated with 7. The stars of the Pleiades are also associated with 7. And then we have 7 world ages, which can be counted back from Eden till now. All of that is the sealing period that is connected with the hourglass symbol for their time, which is the releasing or the loosing of the bands of Orion, which fully, once again, symbolize the hourglass. So, I know that was a lot to take in, but let me begin to read, and I do hope that I will have enough time to reach this before this video cuts out here. Listen very close. As we get to the end, as I said, you will understand, at least from the Hindu perspective, what I've already taught you about these serpents from the Hebrew perspective. First, let's read the caption about this picture here. Statue of the Buddha resting upon the coils of a Naga serpent, upper gallery, Angkor Wat. According to the tradition represented here, the Buddha was sheltered from a week-long rainstorm by the Naga serpent, who enveloped the body of the Blessed One 7 times with his folds. Now remember, this judgment in Genesis is quoted as 7-fold. And maybe, at the risk of not being able to complete this video, I do need to show you this quote from Genesis that will show you quite plain what I'm describing to you here. If Cain shall be avenged 70-fold, truly Lamech 70 and 7-fold. That's right, we're talking about a vengeance that is further associated with these serpents directly out of Genesis. Why is Cain going to be avenged? Can anyone figure that out? Because if Cain is the actual murderer of Abel, should not Abel be the one that is being avenged? This is part of that division. This is that part of the Bible being double that you must understand. Now, if you want to see how I reach the start date, at least for the sealing and binding from the days of the Garden of Eden, watch the video series I did, Start Date for Eden, 36,288 BC. I take this 7-fold of 70 generations, I run it against the cycle of precession, and then you see how this start date is arrived at. It's nothing short of a miracle of understanding. Now, that's the source for the beginning of the understanding of this 7-fold, which now you see perfectly reflected in this mysticism, this mystery religion of the ancient Hindus. The Blessed One 7 times with his folds and spreads his great hood above his head. When 7 days or 7 ages had elapsed, the serpent king knew that the storm had broken up and that the cold had gone. He unwound his coils from the body of the Blessed One, and changing his natural appearance into that of a young man, he stood before the Blessed One. All right. Incredible. Absolutely incredible. Now I'm going to go ahead and basically just jump right here to a little. Let me just go ahead and read this so that you can understand its relationship with this fire from the sky that I am telling you is coming directly from these serpents. Listen very close. When creation is withdrawn, it cannot entirely cease to be. There must remain in subtle form. Remember, the serpent is subtle. There must remain in subtle form the germ of all that has been and will be, so that the world may rise again. It is this remainder of the destroyed universes which is embodied in the serpent floating on the limitless ocean and forming the couch on which the sleeping Vishnu rests. Now, this sleeping Vishnu is going to be in perfect relationship with this sleeping baker that we have already covered from the Hebrew Bible. The sleeping baker, I cannot pinpoint in which book we've quoted that from thus far, but nonetheless, you should be able to see that this is in perfect accord even with Genesis in the Hebrew Bible. Because the very first line of Genesis in the Hebrew Bible, we see that the earth was created. In the beginning, God created the world. And then we see that the second line describes the world was now destroyed without form and void. And then you know the rest of the story of Genesis. Then soon the serpent appears again on the scene. It's the very same thing that is being told to you in this language right here, as it is describing world ages or universes that are being destroyed at a particular cycle. And then if we read here further, we're going to see that this cycle of destruction is associated with a blazing fire that comes from the serpent itself. It says Sesha represents the cycles of time. Indeed, the Vishnu, we read that when Sesha yawns, he causes the earth to tremble with its oceans enforced. At the end of each cosmic period, he vomits the blazing fire of destruction, which devours all creation. Now, you know, guys, we're showing you, and I've showed you, that same cycle here. As I've told you, that each one of these world age periods is started and ended with serpent destruction until they finally escalate and build the collective ego of mankind towards this vanity of we are gods. And then we see that they believe when they reach this final seventh stage, the world has been ripened for the acceptance and the appearance of this serpent who promises to bring the golden age for any of those that are completing his work to bring him about. So in other words, this serpent rising is coming directly from this timing of Eden that we just saw, that is associated with this sevenfold, 70 generation vengeance of Cain. Further association with these serpents. Now, as you can see that, so the Naga serpent, which we see everywhere around us at anchor, are connected to the birth and death of world ages and to the eternal regeneration of time. Now, that makes it no accident that we're seeing this hourglass symbol be manifested in the connections with these mystery religions, even on down to the association of the constellation of Orion. Even on down to the warning on the bottom of a poisonous spider. It's the very same symbol. And you can take that symbol of the hourglass and simply see it as the two inverted and upright triangles once again coming together. The very same symbol. As above, so too below. Now, what will make this much more clear is if I begin to start reading further on this information here, and I hope that I have time. Angkor Wat's western entrance is a place of shadows before dawn, when the sun still lies invisible. The east beneath the vast mass of the temple. Even in low light, it is impossible to ignore the dominant presence of the Naga serpents, which, with their stone bodies and rearing hooded heads, form sinuous balustrades lining the causeway. The same cobra motif in numerous different forms is frequently, almost incessantly repeated, leading one authority to conclude that Angkor Wat was wholly dedicated to serpent worship. Every angle of every roof is adorned with seven-headed serpents. As we shall see, this obsession with the Naga is also expressed in dramatic fashion on the balustrades of Angkor Thom and of many of the outlying temples that coil away to the north and to the east. Now, once again, friends, I've already showed you, over the course of almost 2 years now, how this serpent is intrinsically related to these 7 stages of vibration. In other words, these 7 stages of ever increasing judgment, which is now at the purple stage, which we see being displayed to us practically everywhere you look. It says, in the Buddhist scriptures, we read how Takasaka, one of the fabled kings of the Naga serpents, once again, we're talking about ancient serpent kings, could, like a dragon, and here is our Naga serpent depicted like a dragon right here. Could, like a dragon, cause destruction by the fiery breath of his nostrils. Now keep in mind that we see majority of these Christian channels are trying to tell you guys that this fire from the sky is coming from Jesus Christ. Liars. Deceivers, false shepherds. The proof is in history. The proof is in archaeology. The proof is in the fractal connections in the world around you that even a little child can see. This serpent, this fire that's coming from the sky, is ordained by none other than the serpent himself, and it's recorded in the most ancient histories throughout our entire time episode of the pre-dawn of mankind. Even to the very dawning of a civilization, it's the very same program run over and over and over again. Do not let these people so easily deceive you. They all worship this serpent because of this vain promise that he has offered them to become like gods, when in all reality it is Jesus Christ who offers the straight and narrow path to this perfection, to be as God's children. And with this, you inherit the very kingdom of God himself. So first you must be this child of God, and then enjoy the experiences that God will offer you in eternity as you walk along this path. Each step along the way, you are steadily reaching your perfection. The serpent has come in to shortcut that, to tempt mankind with his perfection in the flesh, which cannot be had. There is one that had the perfection in the flesh, and that is Jesus Christ, and he has come to set the captives free. Are you free? Are you free? It says, Naga serpents could, like a dragon, cause destruction by the fiery breath of his nostrils. This is by no means the only ancient text in which the characteristics of the serpents and dragons appear to overlap. A state of confusion that extends to the heavens, and specifically to the constellation of Draco. Its Greek name means dragon, but it also has been understood throughout history in almost all cultures to be some form of cosmic snake, python, or serpent. In certain ancient astronomical tables, the old serpent, now that's even quoted in Revelation, I think, where it describes perfectly the very same title, that old serpent. Of more common parlance, the snake snatched by Minerva from the giants and whirled to the sky, that man-eating serpent of the Persians. Notice that this just quoted once again the man-eating serpent. And as I told you, this serpent seeks to appear as a man, and then all of his serpent followers, he will bring them to their destruction. In essence, philosophically devouring them, because the serpent is supposed to eat the dust of the earth all the days of his life, is he not? And the serpent, or mankind himself, was created from the dust of the earth. So if the serpent is to eat the dust, mankind is that smallest particulate dust, which is titled the atom. The serpent seeks to devour his followers. just as the king cobra devours its own kind, just as the eastern king snake, wrapped in the chains of white and black, lives and devours off of its own kind with its double forked tongue, titled as the Jacobson's organ. Think about it. Another matter not necessarily negligible is that the constellation of Draco does look very much like a rearing cobra with its hood extended. All in all, therefore, it is easy to see how the rearing Naga with its hood temples, which are prodigiously decorated with the images and forms of Naga serpents, should also be laid out on the ground in the form of a great coiled Naga. And then that's exactly what these temples, in essence, from overhead, are symbolized as coiled serpents. In Indian mythology, the Nagas are supernatural beings, Cobra kings. Does this not seem familiar with ancient Babylon, with ancient Samaria, and even this worship of the serpent that has now infiltrated ancient Israel and even flowed over to the Judean kings themselves? In Indian mythology, the Nagas are supernatural beings, Cobra kings, who rule on earth but who are ranked amongst the gods. Usually, notice that it said ruled on earth, and then we're talking about this ancient serpent king royalty which has been created to rule on earth, in which these elite secret societies believe themselves to be descendants of. Usually depicted as beautiful 5-headed or 7-headed serpents, although the number of heads may be less or more. They are shape changers who can appear at will as fully human or as strange and wonderful hybrids, human above the waist and serpent below. The earliest references to Nagas are to be found in the Rig Veda, India's oldest surviving body of sacred texts. They make repeated appearances to the classic writing such as the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, and the Puranas, and also feature extensively in the Buddhist literature. Now, I probably made some mispronunciations there. I apologize. So, I would like to continue reading here. It is out of rather uncertain background, therefore, that the magical Naga serpents emerge. No, it's not of an uncertain background. This is the author trying to lead you astray from the very certain background of these serpents that we can find recorded in the Hebrew Bible. Very certain that these serpents are in representation of these ancient fallen lords who are following a doctrine, a plan by the serpent to bring himself into the material realm. It is out of rather uncertain background, BS, therefore, that the magical Naga serpents emerge, capable of great benevolence and likewise great malice. Their characters are ambiguous and as unpredictable as the forces of nature. It seems that somebody is going to die by their lack of knowledge, by this unpredictability of these serpent kings in which they believe they know, when in all reality, they have no idea what they're dealing with. They are transdimensional, crossing the realms of sky and ground, time and space, this world and the next, although they intermingle and sometimes intermarry. Sound familiar? With the serpents of Genesis 6, these fallen sons of God that have now taken on the symbolism of ravenous lions and even poisonous, viperous serpents? Crossing the realms of sky and ground, time and space, this world and next, and although they intermingle and sometimes intermarry in the material realm of earth and men, there is never any doubt that their true identity is as celestial and cosmic forces. The first and greatest of the Nagas is the 7-headed Sesha, duration or remainder. Now that would tie us up perfectly to the beginning of Genesis, where if you can read between the lines of Genesis 1 and 2, you will realize that there is destruction that is talked about even by the prophet Jeremiah. So this duration or this remainder is what is being brought about into the next age. The very same remainder, or aka remnant, the remnant of the 12 tribes of Israel, who believe they will be brought forth as the kings and the seeds of the next world age, of which they're calling their golden age, and they're trusting in the serpent to do that. Just as we see the very same symbolisms of the fractal are related, the remainder, the remnant, being brought forth from one fiery age to the next, who is also called Ananta, endlessness, which would perfectly fulfill with this name Anna that's associated with this divine goddess theory that we see so many people are upholding as the sacred feminine. It says, on his coils, drowned deep in the ocean of unbounding nothingness. Now, this nothingness would be the abyss. It would be the bottomless pit. It would be the void. And we know that the abyss, in association with the Leviathan, is this deep ocean, is it not? India's ancient religious texts tell us that Vishnu, the all-God, the divine self-existent, lay asleep dreaming his forthcoming creation. This slumber following a period of dormancy is to be understood as a state. Now, this dormancy is really the time period that he's being sealed in. And of course, as you can see, he is dreaming up his nightmarish dominion that he is hoping to receive if he can just trick the fullness of mankind into allowing him in which the god's vitality slowly ripens to unfold. Well, is not this world age been slowly ripening? If the first chakra is considered red, and then Eden, the symbolism for the apple, ripening is the fruit. And then we see that this fruit has manifested to the destruction of the big apple that is now associated with New York City. In other words, the ripening of this rotten fruit, in which the god's vitality slowly ripens to a fold again in another universe. Another universe? Well, the universe in which he is now could be paired as the spiritual abode. The new universe that he's trying to enter into is the material abode. These alterations of rest and activity, although each of them lasts for thousands of millions of centuries, are as regular as an organic rhythm. India thinks of them as the gods in breathing and outbreathing. Now, that would be perfectly in accord with what Genesis describes, that mankind was created from the breath of God. First, the form of man was created from the dust of the ground, but the actual identity, the actual presence, the actual personality, the actual soul comes directly from the breath of God. Once again, another parallel. It says, now we're going to parallel ancient Egypt, the very same philosophies. Like a tomb bursting triumphantly forth from the waters of the Nun, conjuring out of nothingness the primeval mound, the Bin stone, and the phoenix, the all-god of Indian mythology establishes the universe through the strength of his own will. Remember, do what thou wilt, this God's will against that of the Father, appearing with irresistible creative power. Irresistible? Dispelling the darkness. What is that? The darkness that he himself has been bound in? Like a Tom too, the all-God ejaculates semen into the cosmic waters. Ejaculates semen? Is that not what we're talking about with the mixing and the mingling of the DNA between the daughters of men and these ancient fallen sons of God? Yes, we are. It's the very same story. In the Egyptian tradition, that semen solidifies as the bin, a glowing, reflective pyramidion of stone or iron. You can hear this? Of stone or iron. So the semen is reflective of a stone-style pyramid that can also be reflective of an iron stone-style pyramid. Now get this. Perhaps even an iron meteorite. What? Remember the millstone is supposed to be faked as meteors, and then we see that this god is supposed to rule with a supposed rod of iron, which now is reflective of the very bands of Orion that is released, which can now give him his rule. Orion and iron is the Orion cross. In other words, the double crossing of the genetics in which they have used to deceive the entire world. It says perhaps even an iron meteorite. In other words, this bin, this symbolized ejaculation of semen, can be symbolized as an iron meteorite. That's when I told you that this millstone that comes from the moon is going to symbolize the seeding of this world, and that Ishtar, symbolized as New York City, is going to symbolize the whore, in which this stone semen comes down and produces the birthing of this new world order. In other words, the woman in travail, thought of as have fallen from heaven. What? Aren't we talking about fallen beings from heaven? Right? Perhaps even an iron meteorite, thought of as falling from heaven. Similarly, in the Indian scriptures, we read how the All God, desiring to produce beings of many kinds from his own body. Is that not exactly what the serpent plan was? To produce these types of Nephilim beings from the DNA of his fallen emissaries that are associated with the fallen sons of God, that are associated with these fallen angels from heaven? Exactly. First, with a thought created the waters and placed his seed in them. That seed became a golden egg. What? That seed became a golden egg. What? Is the serpent not trapped inside of this egg, which supposedly, when it's broken up against the throes of Christianity, to produce beings of many kinds from his own body. First, with the thought, created the waters and placed his seed in them. That seed became a golden egg in brilliancy equal to the sun. Incredible. The sun god Ra. In that egg, he himself was born as the progenitor of the whole world. In that egg, he himself was born. You guys see all this? How long are you going to let some of these people mock this channel to death before you stand up for the truth of Jesus Christ, which is absolutely exposing, as this channel does so well, this fallen serpent doctrine? The warnings that I give about this millstone coming from the moon that's associated with these ancient serpent kings and their plan to overthrow the dominion of mankind is in perfect accord with every aspect of ancient history. And these people, I'm telling you, are trying to keep you blind. Don't let them do it. Where's your courage at? Perhaps it is a coincidence that the ancient Egyptian name for meteoric iron is, and I don't know how to pronounce that, and I'm going to say Ba, meaning divine metal. So is not Orion iron metal? And then we see that these beings from Orion are associated with metal or even associated with divinity. Very same thing. Literally metal from heaven. Is not this millstone, this meteorite millstones, or at least the meteoric millstone is associated with an ironite millstone, is it not? Is almost identical to the Sanskrit word for semen. So the meteoric iron, the Egyptian name Ba, is almost perfectly identical to the Sanskrit word for semen. In other words, this fallen star known as Lucifer is symbolized as the semen that has seeded this world. So Ba iron was used in ancient Egypt in rituals aimed at gaining for initiates the life of millions of years. Is it not what these initiates, these Freemasons and these mystery religions are themselves hoping to gain, this eternity in mortal form? Yep, it's the very same thing. Through the escape of the soul to the stars. Now, as I told you, where are they trying to escape from when their serpent brings this fiery vomit of fire upon this world? Well, they're trying to escape to the stars. One particular light in particular, which would be the moon. So the stars associated with heaven, the more pinpointing place where they're seeking to escape to is the moon. This too, the escape of the soul from the always terrible and constantly changing cycle of births and deaths. Remember, woman in travail, Revelation 12 describes them as going to the moon, and they're going to stay there for a period of time while this fire is being brought upon the supposed sinners of this world. Always terrible and constantly changing cycles of births and deaths to which created beings are subject was the ultimate objective of all religious ritual meditation in scripture and ancient India. Exactly. The very same thing that we see in the Hebrew Bible as it's associated with the doctrines and the prophecies of false Israel. India's all God, the self-existent, is Vishnu, and yet more than Vishnu, his nature is complex. In the beginning of creation, the great Vishnu, desirous of creating the whole world, became threefold: creator, preserver, and destroyer. Apollyon is the destroyer? Yes, he is. The same reflection. In order to create this world, the Supreme Spirit produced the right side of his body himself as Brahma. Then in order to preserve the world, he produced from his left side Vishnu. Does this not sound familiar with the left and the right hemispheres of the brain that are equated to good and evil, that further equate back to black and white, to light to dark, to material to spirit? Yep. Same thing. In order to destroy the world, he produced from the middle of his body the eternal Shiva. All right, once again, the serpent. Some worship Brahma, others Vishnu, others Shiva. But Vishnu, one yet threefold, creates, preserves, and destroys. Therefore, let the pious make no difference between the three. Pause if you'd like to read without my interruptions of explanation. And let me back it up to the top of the page so that you guys can better absorb what I just tried to tell you without my interruptions. This is what they say here as it connects to everything with Job, the loosing of the bands of Orion. I mean, you name it, friends, it's all here. The divisions of the brain, the whole nine. Shiva, the third partner in the Hindu Trinity, has as his special emblem the lingam carved from stone. It is a phallic symbol that is sometimes obviously in the form of a penis. Does that not perfectly connect to the obelisk that is associated with the sun god Ra? All the same thing. Sometimes conical and sometimes an upright pillar. Pillar? The pillars of Jashin and Boaz that reflect what? Beauty and the beast? Jashin being the female, he establishes beauty, of which established the Israelite line, the illuminated line, to produce the great work to break the seal. And then, of course, Boaz, the other pillar, the other column, Boaz for serpent, Boa. Once the Shiva lingam is linked to Vishnu's shining golden egg, formed from divine seed. Formed from divine seed, what am I telling you that this serpent needs to enter into this material world? He needs this ancient serpent DNA, which is being perceived as this divine royal blood. And then there we see in the Iraqi dinar, the same serpent who is planning to hatch out of this golden egg. Even though the egg is not depicted as gold in this instance, you can see that on this form of the royal arch, the Ishtar gate, we see the gold come into play as they go from one pasture to the next. Shiva Lingam is linked to Vishnu's shining golden egg, formed from divine seed, and additional said to have fallen from heaven. It is difficult to resist a comparison with Inu, the megalithic pillar of Heliopolis on top which rested the mysterious pyramid-shaped Benben with its own connotations of seed, begetting, and renewal. So in Revelation 12, we're talking about royal children that have been begetted from this royal line or this royal seed. As I told you, Ephraim's mother comes from Heliopolis, the temple of the sun, the capital of Memphis in ancient Egypt. The event that took place at Heliopolis, according to the pyramid text, was the beginning of a new cycle, a new epoch, a new episode of creation, and this too was what followed from the emergence out of darkness of Vishnu, Brahma, and Shiva, the awakening of the all-God that set our current universe in motion. Now, the awakening of their all-God is this fallen prince Enki, the Nahesh, the serpent, which you are seeing depicted in the exact same assemblages from ancient Mexico, Quetzalcoatl, to the very same serpent that you see in Genesis in the Bible, now to these Naga serpents that are associated with this ancient Indian mythology. Same thing. Same thing. Who's got some who has got some courage here to stand with this channel as it reveals the secrets and the mysteries hid from the foundation of the world, all through the leading of the power of the Spirit of Truth, Jesus Christ. We are told that in Indian scriptures, this universe existed in the shape of darkness, unperceived, destitute of distinctive marks, unattainable by reasoning, unknowable, wholly immersed. In this darkness, suspended in the waters of space-time, the supreme God slept on the lap of the serpent. Now, this brings to mind the spirit that is moving across the face of the waters that we see recorded in Genesis, which I have told you before is not the Spirit of God. Because that spirit is moving across the face of the waters after the world has already been destroyed and void and darkness has spread over the face of the deep. The Father does not do this. This is in representation of destruction of these world ages that are responsible by the very acts of these fallen ones themselves. It says, why is the serpent called Sesha, meaning remainder? In other words, remnant, according to the French Orientalist Alain Danielot. When creation is withdrawn, it cannot entirely cease to be. Now that's what's going to link us up to Genesis. And let me show you. It's the exact same story here in Genesis. First line, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Between lines, line 2 now describes after the earth has already been created in the ancient past. Now it's describing a destruction which is happening at the start or the ending of this world age, where the narrative in Genesis is now beginning from in line 2. We don't get the original creation story that would follow directly after line 1. There are many epochs of time that are missing that you can find recorded in Job chapter 38, which is this ancient period where these sons of God, before they rebelled, were still building civilizations upon this world, hoping to bring the slowly evolving mortals of this world to the enlightenment of a true spiritual truth, of which they did rebel, and then of course they begin now to encode and teach the serpent doctrine to mankind, of which we see many are fallen to. So it says, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. Well, we know that this Spirit of the God that is moving upon the face of the waters is the same Spirit that has caused this destruction, which you see now is the very same thing that is being displayed to you in this history. It is this remainder of the destroyed universes which is embodied in the serpent floating on the limitless ocean and forming the couch on which the sleeping Vishnu rests. Is your God, as you see being quoted here in the double Bible, which is encoding Israel's whoring with all of these many waters, in other words, these ancient gods, that has encoded these ancient creation myths from these fallen serpent lords right in your very Bible? Line 2 is word for word the exact same description that you see right here. When creation is withdrawn, all right, first creation was created, and then we see it is destroyed. This void begins to be experienced, but yet it's not a complete void. There is still a residual left. The residual that is left we see is associated with this fallen spirit that is now moving across the face of the deep. It's the very same thing here. There must remain in subtle form the germs cause sickness of all that has been and will be, so that the world may rise again. It is this remainder of the destroyed universes which is embodied in the serpent floating on the limitless ocean, forming the couch on which the sleeping Vishnu rests. At the end of each cosmic period, he vomits the blazing fire of destruction which devours all creation. My friends, my friends, my friends, who is going to stand with me in this proclamation of truth?